And welcome to the April 3rd, 2018 meeting for the County Council, where we will hear public comments. Um, Thank you for being here today. And if we have one speaker, Robert Money, if you'd like to come forward, tell us your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes to tell us what's on your mind.
Good morning. This is going to be brief. It's my 6th appearance. I'm Robert Money at the crime scene, 1512 Newport Ave in DeLand at the airport. Okay, yesterday, April 2nd, 2018, DeLand PD were at the scene in response to me patrolling my property with weapons. I will give you some history on just one of my organized crime network neighbors, 1518 Newport Avenue, DeLand. Previous owner, Melinda Smith, was sued by me in an attempt to rid the area of the career criminal Flavel Jones. Jones had relatives in the sheriff's department. Smith, in a financial bind, was taken by the organized crime network. She was paid $14,000 for her house. Wynell Pitts, convicted felon, armed robber, crack cocaine dealer, whose brother is a narcotics agent, is the owner. Actionable information was given to the Sheriff Chitwood directly by phone calls from me directly to the Sheriff's Secretary and written complaints to Internal Affairs. Just as with former neighbor Mike Henry, the criminals were tipped off. As you know, my case is still pending in the Federal Court of Appeals in Atlanta, 11th Circuit. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak? A card for anyone? If we have no cards, we will close the public participation portion of the meeting, and we will see you back here at 10 o'clock. Thank you. Good morning. We will be starting the meeting in 5 minutes or less, just to let you know, 5 minutes or less. We will begin the meeting in 1 minute and 18 seconds. 1 minute and 18 seconds. This way. 1 minute and counting. Are we live? We have about 10 seconds or less. Somebody's counting. It was told you it was less than 10 seconds. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to the April 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Volusia County Council. Thank you all for showing up on this beautiful April day. And we will call the meeting to order at this time. And we will have the invocation given by Ed Sullivan, of the Central Florida Free Thought Community, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask the council if you'll stand, and those of you who would like to may do likewise.
Thank you. I'm Ed Sullivan. I'm a resident of Enterprise and a Volusia County resident. And I want to thank you for inviting us here, our sincerest gratitude for inviting us here today. And thank you for the work you do every day on behalf of our communities. We believe that there is goodness and wisdom in humanity, that our compassion and our morality grow from our common interest and from the empathy we develop for our fellow human beings, that we are at our best when we act as a community united by our shared values and not divided by those things which set us apart. Today, let us invoke our intellect, that it help us to arrive at answers to our most pressing questions and to help build a stronger and more resilient society capable of meeting all future challenges with confidence and optimism. Let us invoke our sense of community, that it guide us in helping to make everyone feel welcome, and remind us that there are many more things that unite us than divide us. Volusia County is home to nearly 500,000 people with tremendous diversity, and this council has welcomed all without judgment. You understand the value in our diversity and know that we are better when we act as one community, indivisible. Finally, let us invoke our spirit of freedom envisioned by our founders, that our government be free from undue influence of religious institutions, that our personal lives and our religious institutions be free from government interference, and that we may each fully realize our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On behalf of all your constituents, we wish you the best as you work in our public interest here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I'm actually kind of
May we have the roll call, please?
like mold.
Yes. Ms. Cusack?
You need
Ms.
to turn your
Cusack?
microphone on, please.
Hello? You're not live? Oh, you are live?
Ms.
Just a soft
Cusack?
voice.
Yes, yes. Can she hear?
We can't hear you.
Ms. Cusack? She's present. Ms. Denise?
Here.
Dr. Lowry?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Mr.
not
Patterson
per-
will be a little bit late, I understand.
Okay. Ms. Post?
Present.
Ms. Wheeler?
Present.
And Mr. Kelly?
Here. We do have a quorum, and we'll make note when Mr. Patterson arrives. At this time, does anyone have any item on the consent agenda that they would like to make comments on?
No, sir.
Any item you'd like to be pulled?
No, sir.
I have one agenda item I would like to make a comment on. I'll do that after we do have the vote. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion Wheeler, second Post. Any objection to the motion? Hearing no objection, the motion passes unanimously. The item that I wanted to make a quick comment on, and I'll make it very brief, is item AA. And that's on expending the funds for the wastewater treatment facility that serves Halifax Plantation.
That's big.
I know that we've put money to spend it, to do the water plants and so forth. I've had significant talks with the city of Ormond Beach. And within the next couple of years, I really believe that they will be in a position to extend the water and sewer lines to Halifax, to incorporate that area as soon as they become contiguous, because at this point there's a void there. So if this has to be done in accordance to the reading of the, to comply with EPA and so forth, we have to make this. But It just seems a shame that we have to put money when I really believe that this could all go into the wastewater treatment plant of the city of Ormond Beach and the water and so forth. So just bear that in mind. It's a shame we can't put a Band-Aid on it, but I think Band-Aids are there that are falling off right now, just for point of reference for the future. With that, we will move to the next item, which is Item 2. Pardon? Yeah, and just make a note, for the record, Commissioner Patterson is here, council member, sorry. We're the only county that calls us council people. Every other 66 counties are all commissioners, just for the record.
You changed the charter. Just saying.
Is that a motion? I second it. Let's change the charter to be commissioners, so we go to the, I attended the meeting of the East Central Florida Regional.
It's a shame all those other counties got it wrong. That's all I can say.
I attended a meeting and they didn't know whether to call me a councilman, a commissioner, or a chairman, or a chair.
All you gotta do is change the state constitution and become a constitutional officer again, and then, you know.
Anyway, item 2,
Mr. Chair, what we have today, Mr. Booker will lead this discussion, is a review of the 2018 state legislative session. John?
Good morning, John Booker, Government Affairs, Volusia County. We were actually outside in the lobby, and that's what lobbyists do, is they hang out in the lobby. And
well, you've had practice at that too, dealing with them.
most of the best work is done in the lobby, Chair. Anyway, lobbying actually dates back to the 1600s in the British Parliament. Some have called it the world's second oldest profession. I'll let you all be the judge of that. And the first American lobbyist was a man named William Hull, who was hired by veterans of the Continental Army for additional compensation. So there's your factoid, 2 factoids of the day. Gray Robinson has represented the county for 7 years. As they will probably tell you, it was a unusual session. And with that, I'll introduce Robert and his team and let you all hear what he has to say and ask him any questions that you have.
Chairman, council members, Robert Stewart from Gray Robinson, great to be with you today. In your board packet, you've got the entirety of this presentation, which runs through not only Volusia-specific issues, but a lot of other stuff that happened in session. We're going to go through that relatively quickly in order to make best use of your time today at the meeting, but if there's any specific things that we either skip through or don't go into enough detail on, just tell us and we're happy to go back or answer any questions that you've got. And so I'll start, hopefully this works, there we go, with the statistics from the session. The session ended up being 62 days, as you know. They needed 2 additional days to pass their budget. There was 3,200 total bills filed, only 200 passed. There was some news reports after session ended that this was the least productive legislative session in decades. Now, depending on your political bent, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. If you come from the perspective of no man's life, liberty, or property are safe when the legislature's in session, then they probably did a good job. If you think the legislature ought to be acting a little bit more on different matters of policy, then maybe they didn't do such a good job. But those are the hard numbers. And of course, you can't talk about the 2018 legislative session without mentioning what happened in Parkland. Every session has its own unique characteristics, unique flavor, an issue or two that drives the discussion. Without question, Parkland was the dominating factor of this legislative session, starting with the incident itself and the really 3 weeks that commenced after that, where tens of thousands of students and parents and activists from around the state and around the country descended upon Tallahassee, pushing legislative reform in the areas of mental health, gun reform, and of course school safety. The response was the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act, and briefly the components of that package are a 21 and up limit, or a 21 age limit for the purchase of any firearm in Florida, a 3-day waiting period for any purchase of a firearm, and then the Coach Aaron Feist Guardian Program, which in addition to the money that was spent on school resource officers and school hardening, there's money in that package. Let's see what it is. It was like $67 million, $75 million for that program. And what it will ultimately do is allow on an optional basis for sheriffs and school districts to decide they want to opt into the program, and then in a very limited manner, non-instructional personnel that aren't strictly instructional personnel could, if certain checkpoints are met, have the option of carrying a firearm on campus for school safety. That was not the governor's favorite part of this bill, and he made that very clear, and so he even went so far as to say when he signed the bill that if districts are opting out of this en masse, he wants to see that money redirected in a different way so that it's not left unspent. But $400 million was ultimately redirected out of the budget for these programs, 200 of which was recurring money. And that takes us, of course, into the budget. The governor vetoed $64 million of that budget a couple of weeks ago. Breakdown, it was record higher education and pre-K-12 funding, $100 million for Florida Forever. We'll talk about that briefly. Increases for Medicaid, safety net hospitals, $85 million more for the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund. This county, of course, has been a recipient of the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund, and in addition to the $2 million that was received for Williamson Road this year. We'll talk about that a little bit. Full funding for Visit Florida, and you see some of the other stuff that was put into place. And I'm going to introduce now Chris Carmody to talk about a couple other issues. Chris and Katie Fleury, who's also here from our team, are part of the Gray Robinson family that represents Volusia County, and of course we're proud to do that. And so I'll have Chris run through a couple of slides, and then we'll be back with Volusia-specific stuff after Katie goes.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Carmody with Gray Robinson, also during session known as Dan Eckert's paralegal for customary use language. We'll get to that later in the presentation. What's important about this is Volusia, just like the other 66 counties, was not immune to some of the opioid issues in this state and certainly nationwide. The bill, which was passed relatively late in session, as you'll see, the main part of it is it put a 3-day waiting period on prescriptions and a 7-day supply that the prescriber can give. What's important about this is they've taken a step to try and curb some of what's going on. As with any piece of legislation, especially affecting drugs, there's almost always a glitch bill. One of those points there talking about the database program, that's always a sticking point with privacy rights, but the legislators did get it done, they got it passed, and it was signed by the governor. As you can see as well, they put their money where their mouth is. That last bullet on that slide is they put $53 million in funds to combat the crisis in the upcoming fiscal year, which will be through a lot of health counseling as well as dealing with enforcing this new law. Let's take a look at now gambling. So when we put this presentation together, we thought gambling bill was dead. As you can see, they've made a somewhat valiant effort to get somewhere down the line. As you guys know, in the House, it's been about contraction or putting something more permanent in place. In previous years, they talked about having a 20-year just settled compact with the Seminoles, and as well everything on the pari-mutuels and racing and what have you. And the slot machines, the Senate's been a little more willing to expand it a little bit, or at least deal with some of the county-approved by referendum slot machines down in South Florida. And they've always been at a standstill. They conferenced this bill. They even conferenced some of it during those extra 2 days of session, but eventually came to a stalemate. Now, as I said before, when we sent this proposal, it was done. Since then, there's been some overtures made by both the House and Senate that they might have a special session. Some are saying, why would they do a special session now? It's election season, what have you. Well, on the November ballot, and we'll get to that a little bit later, there's going to be one amendment dealing with gambling. And if it's believed, as if that amendment passes, and it's polling as it will, that it'll freeze the legislature's ability to do anything with gaming in the state of Florida, period. Can't change it, can't retract it, what have you. So the bite of that apple, if you will, to fix gaming or expand it, whatever it is your prerogative, is now between now and November, essentially. So we believe they probably will have a special session. Some of that will be cooked beforehand, some of it will be cooked on the spot, and then we'll see where that plays out. And then finally, on my side, daylight savings. You probably heard a little bit about this. This is a bill that's been around for many years, never got to the finish line this year. It did have the Speaker Pro Tem behind it in the House, which helped get it to the finish line. And once it passed, of course, a lot of folks started to say, wait, what are we doing? We're gonna move off daylight, or move to permanent daylight savings time. What happened is the governor did sign it, but part of it, and at least the signals we got from the governor's office, was There is no intent in Congress. They barely can pass a Mother's Day bill. In fact, they cannot pass Mother's Day legislation in Congress, much less moving Florida or the rest of the country onto daylight savings. So there's no urgency on this, but Senator Rubio did say when he filed his legislation that if he did it, he would do it for the whole country, not just Florida, so we don't have parts of the year where we're way off everyone's time, including the East Coast. So, but something to pay attention to, especially in this tourism-friendly county. Obviously, this was created before he signed it. He did end up signing it. And so, finally, Florida Forever. This is obviously important here in this region of the state. For years, since Amendment 1 passed, there's been this big debate of whether the money in Amendment 1 should go towards purchasing of land or go to springs restoration. Under Speaker Carissa Foley, there was a big focus on springs restoration. That makes sense given his background. Now with Budget Chair Rob Bradley, based out of Northeast Florida, there's been a re-energized focus on purchasing land. So as you saw this year, they put $100 million into the budget for purchasing in the state's land buying program of Florida Forever. And we expect in the coming years that will stay the same. Rob Bradley's expected to be the budget chair the next 2 years under Senate President-designate Bill Galvano. So if so, we expect Florida Forever will stay in that posture. There's Mr. Bradley and some of what he did. And then I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who's going to talk a little bit about the tax package and a few other issues, and then we'll get to the local issues.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'll go right in with the tax package. It passes year for $169 million. Some highlights of that would be the hurricane disaster tax week and some tax exemptions for that, the 3-day back-to-school sales tax holiday, and a reduction of the business rent tax by 0.1%, so it's now at 5.7%. A bill also passed that will expand the use of tourist development taxes. A good example of this is traditionally you could pay for the building with tourist development tax, but not the road. This would potentially allow you to pay for the road with TDT funds as well. If the county collects $10 million annually in TDT money, spends at least 40% of it in marketing for tourism, and a 2/3 vote from the county commission. We'll skip workplace contractors, and we will go into supermajority vote to raise taxes. That also passed the legislature this session. You'll see it on the ballot. It requires the legislature to have a 2/3 vote before they raise any taxes or fees in the future. And that'll be one of 5 members or 5 ballot initiatives that you'll see before the CRC puts anything on there. Also, hurricane preparedness. The task force was created in the House, and they had 78 different recommendations. 2 things that I'll note for you guys is a study of sea level rise, the creation of a detailed 3-dimensional map of the state, a study of coastal sea level rise, and a study of coastal flood hazards. And also they will have a study of petroleum distribution centers to optimize fuel restoration following the next storm. And I'll give it back to Robert and Chris for CRC.
Thanks, Katie. And the timing of this presentation is somewhat fortuitous. The Style and Drafting Committee of the Constitution Revision Commission, which is the final committee stop before proposals are sent back to the full CRC for the vote to whether or not a proposal goes to the ballot, is meeting today for their second overall meeting, but the first real substantive meeting that happens today at 1 o'clock. We'll be, of course, monitoring that and reporting back to the county on anything of impact that might take place. But by definition, they meet every 20 years. It's in the Constitution. There are 25 proposals still alive today that have made it off of the floor and to the Style and Drafting Committee. Interesting wrinkle from previous years, or 20 years ago, I should say. A proposal needed a supermajority vote to make it to Style and Drafting 20 years ago. So by the time it got there, you sort of knew where the votes were on the final package. This year, they went the opposite direction. It only needed a simple majority vote to get to Style and Drafting, and it'll need the supermajority to pass once it comes out of that committee. So the drafting committee is combining proposals, editing proposals. They have the power to amend proposals, and a lot of that we'll see play out today and in the coming weeks before it comes back to the committee for final vote. Their work has to be done, Chris, by May 10th, and so May 9th, excuse me. And so sometime in the next few weeks we'll see ultimate resolution on a lot of these proposals. Anything to add on CRC?
No, other than you can't take the politics out of politics. You can imagine there's been a lot of horse trading to get those 25 proposals to the Style and Drafting Committee. There'll be a little bit of horse trading on that committee to decide how they're grouped, where they're grouped, whether they're amended, and then, of course, it'll get to the floor. And then from there, hopefully there won't be too much horse trading because these are things you might actually put on the ballot, which will eventually be voted on. But It's an interesting process, and it's everyone, including y'all and the folks that are part of it, have to learn as they go, because every 20 years the process changes.
Yeah,
some.
and as Katie mentioned, there are already going to be 5 proposals on the ballot put there either by citizen petition or by legislative action, and so there has been a significant amount of discussion by the CRC, both in this committee and on the full floor, about voter fatigue. How many items can we put on the ballot before you're not getting a truly engaged, understanding voter when they get to those final proposals? So that's part of the calculus that's going into a lot of this.
Robert,
Yes, ma'am.
speaking of the fatigued voter, wasn't there something, a proposal talking about when people actually don't vote, it would be considered a negative vote? Could you speak on that?
I don't think that's one of the ones that's still alive.
I don't remember the proposal number, but there was one that essentially required that it be 60% of everyone that voted on the ballot. So if there was undervotes, that essentially would work against you, because you need to, if there was 1 million people in Florida that voted, you'd have to have 600,000 vote for your initiative, even if only that particular initiative had maybe 300,000 people actually vote on it. That died. If that was to go through, good luck passing any ballot initiative in Florida, because a lot of them are undervoted.
Could that come back, you think?
Technically speaking, it could. The Style and Drafting Committee has the power to do with a majority vote just about anything it wants, but they are also very recognizing of that power, that they need to be following the will of the full body with what they do at the Style and Drafting Committee. So it could come back. I think it's unlikely.
The Chairman Baroof and the chair of the Style and Drafting Committee made clear that while Robert's correct, technically anything can come back, anything can be amended on. They made it clear that if it wasn't already in Style and Drafting, it was essentially dead. And part of that is members of the commission have been given the right to withdraw, because everything needs to be heard at least once on the floor unless you withdraw it. And so now you're starting to see some of these bills withdrawn, including the CON bill I read yesterday was withdrawn by Commissioner Kruppenbacher. So when it's withdrawn, while technically it's still come back, I don't anticipate something changing on there.
Okay, thank you.
So and then lastly, Chairman, then we'd be happy to take any questions that you or your colleagues may have. We had from a Volusia County specific perspective, I would say we had a very good session. And that starts with the securing of $2 million additional dollars for Williamson Road on top of the almost $2 million that was secured through the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund at the governor's level. And so there's some information about that, and I'm sure you are all aware of it already. Customary use, we talked about this last session, our report after last session. It came back again. It came back in several different forms. And I would say, as a credit to Volusia County, to you, to your members, to your county attorney, to your staff, throughout the process, while some of the drafts were not good for us, some of them hurt us, some of them didn't exempt us the way it should have, there was a constant recognition that Volusia had gone through the process the right way, and that ought to be recognized in whatever legislation passed. Ultimately, and with Mr. Eckert's wise counsel and quick responses to often late-night emails, we were able to help draft a final proposal when we knew that this was going to pass that fully exempts Volusia County and your ordinance from any impact of this state legislation. So it was a nice win for the county and for any other county that was similarly situated like you, that had gone through the process the right way. Home rule protection, not every bill related to home rule and infringing upon home rule was able to be defeated, but many of the bad ones were, including things like tree trimmings or modifications to your MPO, impact fees, the firefighter cancer presumption, all of which did not reach final passage before the end of the session. And we talked a little bit about the CRC. Of course, Proposal 13 is one of the ones that's being heard today in Style and Drafting, and we'll be reporting back to you on that as the days come and go. So with that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's something specific, we'd love to answer any questions. And as always, we are grateful for the privilege of representing you in Tallahassee and carrying your message from here to the halls of the Capitol.
Mr. Deneen.
Two things, Mr. Chairman. John, would you step to the microphone? Number one, the thing on customary use. I think the council needs to stop and remind everybody that when it comes to protecting access to the beach and driving on the beach, that repeatedly the county is in the forefront of protecting that and gets no credit. I personally want to thank Dan, Jamie, and everybody else and all of you for all the hard work. But that's all about access to the beach, not even driving. And I think people take that for granted, and we'll probably have the most access of any beach in Florida. And the fact that we try to fight for that, I'm not sure people really understand. But I want to applaud all the efforts, and I want to applaud all the work from our lobbyists. The other thing, I've asked John to step to the microphone. One other thing happened that I'm struggling with, and we're trying to understand, and it was a last-second thing on the last day, because we asked them, how come we didn't know about this? John, why don't you comment on this, and I'll talk about what we're trying to deal with. This has to do with sales tax.
The legislature put into action some restrictions as far as counties' abilities or city municipalities' ability to further modify how folks are taxed. And this came in, I believe, on the 59th day at the 59th hour. Something that a lot of folks were surprised at. It was contained in the tax package, which 500 pages. 500 pages. There, 400 and something pages. So anyway, impacts on a lot of cities, the League of Cities, Association of Counties. We're all trying to figure out how this is dealt with, and the guidance from the state, I think, is something that we're still trying to work out. What is exactly needed in order to comply, in order to get a referendum on the books. Or
I'm gonna have Donna comment specifically on what we're facing. Donna?
What they inserted into the tax package basically was before a referendum.
On sales tax.
On sales tax specifically, and this applies to the counties as well as the school district. 60 days prior to that referendum being on the ballot, you have to have a report that is posted out on our website. Now, this is a report that is basically an audit that is, and they require a CPA to come in and do an audit of your program and what you intend to do with that sales tax. Now, the problem when you read the language, it's a little bit confusing because they use the word audit and then they use the word examination. Two distinct different types of engagements of a CPA. Now, the CPA is to be selected by the Office of Policy Administration, OPAGA is what they're known, and government analysts. And that's an arm of the legislature that does a lot of research. And if you ever go on their website, you'll see some of the research they've done. Typically, it's research that's done on programs that are already in motion or already ongoing, not something that you haven't even done yet. So it's a little bit disconcerting about exactly what is going to be involved in this audit/examination. I've spoken to our auditors. In fact, they're here today on the audit. And even they find that it's a little bit unusual to try and wrap your arms around exactly what that engagement would include. And they have they have several things that they wanted included in that audit/examination, which they delineated in the actual information in the bill, but it's kind of vague. It's so vague that it's a little hard to know exactly what it is you're supposed to do. So we've been in contact with OPAGA. I know FAC has been in contact with OPAGA. It's kind of like, well, hold on, because they themselves don't know what they're going to do. So we're going to be in contact to try and find out what it is we have to do. Now, we're prepared. I know that we know what our programs will probably be. I mean, at Volusia County, I am prepared, and the staff is going to be prepared to do whatever it is we need to do to supply the information so that a report can be drafted in time. But it's a short window of time for this to be completed.
Donna, does that mean every city?
We believe it does.
We believe it does.
Wow. So
We
all
would
the
believe
60?
it does because the sales tax is going to be distributed
directly
to the
to them.
city, directly to the cities from, our direction on the way that our proposal is written.
We believe because this is it's never been done before, and how you put an auditor reviewing a function that hasn't even been developed. The one thing that we probably have going for us is that the way we're structured here at the county, and we can look at all our projects, and because of things like our dynamic master plan, which shows exactly how we order everything, how we manage it, how we go out to bid, we probably would be easier for someone to understand our process and audit that. I'm not sure that's true for all the cities, and so at this point, I just want you to know, this is sort of we're trying to kind of catch a cloud in a jar, and we're trying to understand it, and then once we understand it better, we'll talk to all the council members and we'll be engaged in the cities. It is a fairly short window because they have to have this whole report done and officially done and posted on our website 60 days in advance. We were not expecting this. This is brand new. No one's ever done this before. And right now, as Donna said, we tried talking to APAGA, but they're like, they don't have any answers, and they're the ones in charge, and they're the ones that have to tell us what the guidelines are going to be. So I just wanted you to know we are actively working with them. We are trying to understand, so we may have something that's a bump in the road and we can deal with really easily, or we may have a mountain that we have to scale. We won't know till we really, the big question for us is what OPAGA wants to do and what their perspective is and what their expectations of an audit firm are, and really, like Donna said, understanding what they are asking us to do, because they used dissimilar words in what they described. So I just wanted you to know, and I don't blame our lobbyists, 59th day, 59th hour, everyone got caught unaware that this was going to be added.
Ms.
Thank you.
Davies.
So let's talk about transparency, but let's stay right here. What was the source of this? Where did this come from? Do we know?
The language itself?
The issue.
So the issue was the substance of a House bill and a Senate bill, for that matter, that had been in play in the process, but for all intents and purposes was procedurally dead. The House bill, I think, had passed or had at least gotten to the floor. The Senate bill had not even gotten through all of its committees. And as the final versions of the budget, the final allocations, and the tax package were being negotiated behind closed doors, this piece was added to the final tax bill that was agreed upon by both chambers before it was voted on by the Senate. So it was brought up as a strike-all amendment, part of the larger strike-all amendment in the Senate, passed by the Senate, sent to the House, they concurred, and it was over. So it was, even if, to Jim's point, even if we had known, we and the other folks who worked on this on behalf of local governments had known, once it's in that strike-all amendment and it's a do-or-die bill that has to pass for the tax package, it wasn't coming out.
Just so you do know, we do believe that it'll affect at least 5 other communities.
Oh, no, I get that, and I totally agree. What's the effective date on this? Is there an effective date been identified?
The tax package July 1st. I don't know.
July 1st.
Was that specific section any other effective date?
No,
Okay.
I just saw July 1st.
Okay, so effective dates, July 1st. What's missing in all of this great void, this cloud that you're trying to put in a jar, is implementation language. And what this shadows that's even worse is years ago when they did Florida Statute 411, the implementation of VPK passed the legislature, and then boom, it was implemented without implementation language, and we cleaned that up. I see DJ Lebo from the Early Learning Coalition, their current executive director, but years ago, we spent years cleaning that implementation language up and doing damage control statewide. So the question,
Perfect example.
it's a perfect example. Here's the question then, and that took more time. Senator Lynn did a tremendous job with us back there in the day to help us clean that up, but at least we had a road path with this. If there's no department that you can call today to figure out how do we go forward. There's no implementation language.
Right.
There's no cause and effect. There's nothing in this. So you can't even wrap your arms around. There's no words for language that has no effect, but yet we have to abide by a law. It's a law, right? We have to abide by a law that has nothing in the background. There's no staff. There's nothing. But it's going to stop in its tracks home rule and local accountability.
That's the key.
That's the key. But yet we're supposed to say it's okay and we've had a good legislative session. I say just the opposite. This isn't home rule, and there's nothing behind it to make their point. So it's bad law, it's bad legislation, and maybe there should be a point. Florida Association of Counties, or maybe we need to start something that before a law is passed, the implementation language and at least an office with one employee is set up to handle the requests from those that they're going to cover. And regulate. We're regulating empty. There's nothing here.
It's about them having control.
Just so you know, though, we plan on doing everything we can to try and make sure we understand it. We are really aggressive about this. I just felt that you needed to know this was something we had absolutely did not see coming. We will do everything we can. You have my word.
Well, you know, I mentioned to you when we discussed it that I know it didn't go into effect till July 1st. And I know 2 other counties already have on the ballot, Bay County, and I'm not familiar with the other one that was announced. They already both have half-cent referendums coming up for infrastructure, as it may, I think, Bay County, and I'm not sure if it's Walton or the other, one of the ones in the Northwest. And they're going to go ahead and have theirs. If we had ours done, why could we not have ours done and published and whatever we need to do before July 1st, then would it be in effect? And I don't think there's anything from what I've been explained in the brief explanation I've had that says if it was in advance of July 1st, you cannot go back and make it retroactive. That hadn't been done in any bill in the past. When it goes into effect July 1st, it's July 1st. So if we could get our schedule to be put on, I don't know that we would have to comply with that. I mean, that's where I thought maybe checking with the other counties that have maybe they all experienced this at the same time.
That's something we're going to check into.
Dan, you know that answer, right, Dan?
Well,
It's important.
it would be very difficult. We can look at that. You'd have to have the special election, I think, before. First of all, your intention has been to place it on the general election ballot contemporaneously with the so you'd have to have a special election. You'd have to adopt the ordinance and then have the ballots go out to the overseas voters 35 days in advance. It'd be a very tight timeline if you were. We can look at it if that's the council's pleasure. What we're doing with what the legislature's doing, and here with the question of sales tax, that their power is at its zenith because they have exclusive authority over this, and ultimately it's designed to inform the voters. And I think the county will, as the manager said, will have its program ready. We'll have it on its website if it can be done, I think the voters will see what your program is. I hope the cities are, and I think most of the bigger ones will be in a position to do that. And so, it's not so much it's that it's an issue that is preventing you from placing it on a ballot. It's just that OPAGA is not ready to implement. And so the question is going to be whether or not they're going to be able to hire an accountant so that accounting firms so that we can have it ready to be on our website for September 1st. And you would be providing information to the voters anyway. So if they'll be ready, we'll be ready. And if they're not ready, then you're still in a position of a special election.
Yeah, my guess is they're not going to be ready to do anything until after July the 1st, which is going to put it extremely difficult, and they're not required to give us an answer in a given period of time, I'm guessing.
What they have to do is to hire the accounting firm. If they can do that and provide, they have guidelines for their reports that they're.
Yeah, but the legislature doesn't want it to happen, so they're not going to let them hire somebody to let us start having something on the ballot because it just goes back to the control in the last minute. And I remember the issue was discussed because both the Senate and the House did have that language in there that was in another bill, independent, I think, on the going to the voters.
I don't think we're the county that are among the counties that about which the legislature had concern. I'm reluctant to say what I have heard because I don't know it. But we'll be, if there's a way to comply, we'll do it, and we'll be informing the voter in this way in addition to the other ways that the council has provided information. And ultimately, it's just designed to inform the voter what they're choosing.
I know Joyce and I, going back to our wonderful days in the legislature, when APAGA was asked to look into different departments or whatever, they were expected to come back with a kind of a neutral view. But this is something a little bit different because you're using an outside CPA firm. And I think we have to be careful how we approach this, because if we look like we're trying to push something beyond this, it could blow up on us, and those out there that are opposed to this, just because they're opposed to it, would use it to say that, you know, you're trying to get around it. And I'm wondering, if you've got 16 cities and APAGA says one of them, one of the programs or one of the infrastructure, whatever they want, is not a good idea, they could kill the whole thing if just by maybe one or two reports from APAGA by the CPA. So, well, you know, they probably won't bring in a local CPA to do it. It's going to probably be somebody from outside the area to get an independent view on this.
Well, once again, we will, I just wanted you to know, I think you needed to know, we will do our best to try and meet all the guidelines as quick as possible. The one thing that I have some concerns about, Donna and I talked, and she talked to our auditor, there are parts in that where I think they want the auditor to render an opinion that is not traditionally an opinion an auditor would render, which has more to do with policy than it has to do with numbers. That concerns me on whether someone's willing to answer that. I'm not sure I would want to do that if I was the auditor, especially on a program that doesn't exist. But here's what I want to do. I don't know whether we're facing a bump in the road or a mountain. I just thought that you needed to know we will do everything that's possible to try and meet their requirement.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lowry.
So let me get this right. The state legislature has passed a law putting an organization of people in charge that probably shouldn't be in charge and have no experience in that area. And when we contact those people, they don't have a clue what we're supposed to do.
That's about it.
That sounds about right. At first, when you mentioned the quick timeline, that appealed to me, but then I think there's some wisdom in Councilman Patterson. You know, to try to speed that up, we might be portrayed as trying to hurry up and get something through before they figure it out. You know, when we're trying to be totally open on this and to get something done that needs to be done. So anyway, I think we ought to try to see what we can do to keep the schedule as is and see what we can do to confer. But boy, I'm telling you, that idea of one city, one project that somebody didn't like the looks of it could throw the whole thing off track is certainly a sobering thought. Anyway, thank you.
Ms. Post.
So I mean, I understand that this is a bump or even a giant molehill in the road for us, but to me, it's politics. It is what it is. Nothing new that I think that the legislature has come out with ridiculous stuff before or things that certainly can't be enforced at a local level. When Councilwoman Cusack and Patterson were excluded, just so. But you know, it really is what it is, and I think as long as you know, we look at what's going to be happening, you know, let's look at A, B, and C. Let's be ready for it and tackle it as it comes. You know, crying about it isn't going to help it. But I also think that this is an excellent point to bring up, that having these relationships and being involved when these things are being brought up in discussion. I know this was brought in at the last hour, but you know, us being involved in those discussions in the background as these things are happening and having that dialogue is very helpful to Volusia County. So, thank you.
Jim.
One other comment, Mr. Chair. I think your insistence in the council's agreement on having that independent third party as a review of these projects, I do think might help us. When I read what they ask us for, that might be one of the real keys that would help us get this through quicker, because what they're going to give you is an opinion for the citizens on to give them an idea what is there so they can vote on it. And part of it is it being looked at, and are the projects in line with what people voted for? So the fact that you're going to have that committee, in my opinion, could be one of the saving graces for us on getting a good audit. So I just wanted to remind, I think that was a great idea, and I think that could make a big difference in how the audit comes out.
Okay, Ms. Cusack.
Well, this is typical business in Tallahassee.
this is the way that they operate. I think that we have to be mindful of the fact that the same group that has implemented this will also be the controlling force that will select these third-party independent auditors. So do you do it in the front door or the back door? So you really are not in charge. We are the losers on this. And so when you are in this position, I think Patterson is absolutely right in as much as it's probably best to see APAGA is known for doing not, well, I've not been pleased with reports that have finally come out with anything that APAGA was in charge of. And I can say that of having served 8 years in the legislature. So I don't have much hope in what we're looking at here. And I think this is not the end of the tunnel. So I think it would be wise and prudent upon us to wait this course, to see what will happen. And it's going to be difficult. Can you imagine 16 cities and the county? And if they make one decision that one thing is not to their liking, it kills what has been good government at the local level to get to this point, that they're at the 11th hour, they can change and throw this type of situation into us. It just goes back to say that we have a lot of work to do as citizens to control who runs our legislatures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dennis.
Thank you. Can I change issues here? Let's talk about Oak Hill, water, sewer, septic, and it's I'm going to bring it up now because our next agenda item is going to be our water quality assurance plan, the Mosquito Lagoon quality assurance plan, and you won't be here when we do that presentation, so maybe this could be a good
Excuse
segue.
me just 1 minute. Mr. Eckert had a comment on the previous, if yours was on the previous discussion, let's go ahead and continue that, Dan, if we could.
Well,
Ms. Dennis.
just again, I couldn't, all of us could agree could not agree more, I'm sure, with what Councilmember Cusack said at the end, but what OPAGA's role is to get it ready itself to hire the auditing firm that will do this, whether or not it's a single firm or a group of firms so that they can be done regionally. And our role is to push them. What we can do at this point is to push them to be ready to do that. The report is not, it's not that they substitute their judgment for the county council and the voters for this report. It's to inform the voters, which we would want anyway. So, and the issue is they need to be, for the council is that they need to be ready to do that so that you can have this on the November ballot, so that you're not costing yourself a special election, for example, in December. Because if you don't, that tax has to come into effect on January 1. So that's, and if a special election next spring is a special election, is the cost of a special election no matter when. But it would, the roads that you intend to put this to would be delayed by a year. That's the issue.
Okay.
And so if we don't do it then, well, we will do it then.
Okay. All right. Ms. Dennis, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to try to wind that. Let's have all the comments on that issue and let's go forward. If you have, what's that?
Thank you. Yeah, I want to talk about water septic issues. The ask for an Oak Hill, this is the second legislative session, $250,000 for something that would get a great return on investment and help clean up our lagoon. And this council's made a priority, and we're going to talk about it in the next agenda item with a PowerPoint and our reasonable assurance plan. Help me understand. I know that Parkland happened. I know we had political missteps, we'll call it that, before Parkland that was on everybody's mind, and budgets, and we talk about relationships. I think all those relationships have been reconfigured after a few things have been reconfigured in Tallahassee. and that's unfortunate for all of us. But going forward, we say this every year, Jim. We bring staff in. We have the best. We got the plan. We know how to implement it. And why can we not get past phase one with our legislature on $250,000 to help clean up the lagoon and set that area right? We put millions of dollars in other projects. We're talking I'm going to make this, I'm all in now. I've gone through 2 legislative sessions, and we've worked back channels. I've worked behind the scenes. I've gone to Tallahassee, and I think now it's time for some Facebook Live videos of what it really looks like down in Oak Hill, using 55-gallon drums that are leaking directly into the Indian River Lagoon, but we can't get $250,000 out of the legislature to start this process. And I can tell you there's a lot more coming to the table that want to see this accomplished. Help me understand this, because I know you don't do the budget, but guys, I said this last time, this has got to be a priority. We're talking all this big sky and pie in the sky things, and then at the 11th hour, they pull the rug out, and oh, by the way, and oh no, this is going to happen. So this is a tangible issue that everybody can agree on. How do we get there, and how do you help us make that a priority?
If I can, I would say in the legislative process, and 2 of our former legislators know it, sometimes the good ideas take the longest to achieve, and sometimes the half-baked or inartfully drafted policy gets done on the first pass because of the right person that maybe put it through. I point out Williamson Road. You're familiar with how long it took for us to get that across the finish line, and I'm going to give kudos to all of you and the staff. If our collective team, y'all and us, didn't get it through the Job Growth Grant Fund stage, it would have been vetoed in the budget. Just about everything else in the transportation silo this year was vetoed in the budget.
I
So some of our
understand.
early project work led to this. I would say this is a similar situation now. Specific to water, this was a very unique session. For 2 sessions, the legislature spoiled cities and counties with water projects under Speaker Chris Foley, who was more than happy to fund as many water projects as he could. Under Speaker Corcoran, and to some extent Senate President Negron, that priority has not been there, as you have seen the last 2 years. This year with Parkland, but also rising Medicaid costs and also push in the Senate for Florida Forever funding, which we covered earlier in our presentation, the negotiations came to, the House was going to put a small pot of money forward, the Senate had a much larger pot of money, but the House said if you want your Florida Forever, you essentially have to take our small pot of money on Springs funding. And when I say small, there was over $1 billion requested, and I think, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, I think only $20 million got funded on that sheet. The Senate had over $40 million funded on their lines, none of which actually made it into the final budget. It was just the House list. Some of that was politics, some of that was last minute, some of that was Parkland took up almost $500 million of the dollars.
It's all
that were on the table.
politics.
Oh,
It's
you can't take the politics out of
all
politics, for sure,
politics.
Councilwoman. But I would say some of that was timing of what happened at the end of session. Some of it was the current perspective and politics of the leadership of this chamber. Now, fast forward to January of 2019, you're going to have a new governor, you're going to have a new speaker, and a new Senate president. The policies will shift. It's our job on your behalf to go figure out where those policies will be. If we're getting the signals all summer from the presiding officers that water projects will be treated similarly to how they've been treated the last 2 years, we'll come back with you and your leadership team and we'll figure out a better plan forward if we honestly don't think this would have much of a chance. Or we might get a signal that, yeah, we're going to go fund more water projects now that we're moving forward. And we can obviously put our best foot forward on this.
So, okay, so here's the advantages of the next legislative session. There will be a new governor, there will new things, and thank goodness the legislature doesn't start till the spring instead of January, right after changing tenure. What concerns me is what you just said was, if there's no chance of this going forward, that's not what I want to hear. $250,000, and it's not a spoiled ask. This is water cleanup, economic development, and water quality, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just don't want to hear that if they're...
Be clear, we take our direction from y'all, and if this is on your priority list,
Understood, it
we will
is.
absolutely push it uphill or downhill or whatever hill is put in forward of us. That being said, it's our job also to give you good, honest advice and consultation and let you know what we believe the lay of the land is. Without a doubt, it's not for lack of effort. This was an interesting last 2 years of the legislative session as far as where some of the priorities were. And it was also part and parcel of a legislative body, particularly on the House, that kept their cards very close to the vest. And you didn't know sometimes, and even the members within the body did not know what was going to happen until it just kind of came out as it was through the public process. So that being said, it's not without lack of effort. We'll continue the effort so long as you guys continue to put it on your priority list. And we'll do our best over the summer and then leading up to
Let's
session.
move on.
Thank
I
you.
think we've drugged this past the, Mr. Patterson, you have a closing?
I think we need to remember, it's not just a 60-day session, that we need to get involved with these things starting right after the November election.
Exactly.
When the committee week start. It's not that 60 days. And I've always said the worst time in the world to go up there and raise hell with the
Volusia days.
legislature is during the 60-day session. We need to, and that's what when I was chairing the MPO to TPO, we were going up and talking to them back in the district, sitting down and having a conversation with our legislators here. And so, you know, Arlene was working with me on that several years ago. So that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
I think we need to look at come up with some creative ways in Mosquito Lagoon. I've got 85 guys in my fly fishing club that I belong to over in New Smyrna Beach, and they just, every time I go to a meeting, that's the issue that comes up because they're really concerned about that lagoon.
Okay. Well, thank you for a very good report, very enjoyable. You presented it in a very good manner, in a timely manner. Appreciate that. We allowed you to stay a little longer with our questions and comments, but you did a great job, and presentation, you really did keep it interesting, and I appreciate that fact. So thank you, and have we retained them for next year or not? Not yet? Huh? Anyway, based on that, we'll look at that when it comes time, I guess, then. So thank you very much. John, thank you for your help, too, on that. With that, we'll move to item number 3. Mr. Deneen, you have a introduction to make on that one? John?
Yes, this is obviously, it ties right into what Ms. Denise was saying. This is a process we're really encouraging. Judy, John? John will introduce the speaker, and what we'll do is go over where we are. I'm really proud of this because you wanted an action plan to do things, and without an action plan, you'll never get a chance to get grants for these projects, and that's what this leads to. John, you want to introduce? Or you or Judy?
Still morning, right? Good morning. John Angeli, Public Works Director. The item before you today is actually a progress report on the Mosquito Lagoon Reasonable Assurance Plan. This has been like it's about a 2-year process that we've been through, meeting with our partnering cities, Oak Hill, New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater, of course, Volusia County, and we have FDOT involved as far as a funding partner, and no specific projects or no specific inputs other than funding at this point. Our consultant, Brett Cunningham, is here to give you an update. He's presented this presentation to each of the other funding partners, participating cities as well, so he can give you an update on the results of those discussions that occurred in their respective commission chambers as well.
Council members, I'm excited to present an update on this project, which clearly you have a lot of interest in, as do a number of your citizens. So there's really 2 goals for this presentation. As John said, is to give you an update on where we are with the project, but also I want to go into the projects that we would be proposing, go into the actual plan that would be carried forward in implementation, so you have a good chance to look at those. As you're probably aware, the genesis of this project started in 2014 when you hosted the water quality workshop. There, one of the many things we talked about was different regulatory ways that we can achieve restoration. And that led to this reasonable assurance plan, the JPA, between the 3 cities, DOT, and the county to do this. And I will also say, in addition to that this has been a very collaborative process. I've mentioned DEP, Indian River Lagoon, St. Johns River Water Management District. I think we have about 45 or so total entities that are part of this. So it's been, we've received a lot of really good input throughout the process. And as you're probably aware, what a reasonable assurance plan does is it really takes place of the usual process of achieving restoration. And the two big parts of that usual process are developing a total maximum daily load and then the basin management action plan associated with that. So the total maximum daily load tells you how much of a particular pollutant a water body can safely assimilate, and the basin management action plan tells you then how much of that has to be removed from the current conditions. So the reasonable assurance plan, in essence, takes the place of those two things. And the difference, really the main difference between doing a reasonable assurance plan and going the traditional route is that in the traditional route, DEP is in the driver's seat, you're in the passenger seat. With the reasonable assurance plan, you're driving the bus, DEP is in the passenger seat. And one of the big benefits for it is that you can get to restoration faster, which is really one of the big driving forces why you decided to do this. This whole process, if you'd have gone the conventional route, could have taken 10 years, maybe even longer. We'll get there in 2. So a shortcut for that, and then that avails you to the funding a lot faster to start achieving the restoration. With that said, this just kind of gives you an idea of the 2-year process we've been through and really the main elements of developing a reasonable assurance plan. And I'll kind of cover 5 of the keys. The first one is determining pollutant of concern. For Mosquito Lagoon, it's nitrogen, so that's our primary one. We also have to look at phosphorus and other things, but really when you look at the data, nitrogen is the big driver for the lagoon, as it is for a lot of the estuarine water bodies. Then some of the other big components were determining where the pollutants were coming from. I'll give you results of that. Another one was establishing the water quality targets. So what do we have to hit? I'll show you how we got to that. We kind of put those two together, determine how the lagoon responds to different loads, to then determine how much of that load has to come out. And then finally, we develop the projects that we come up with to achieve that load reduction. So we're all the way through that process, at least in draft form, and we actually have a draft reasonable assurance plan that we're ready to put out once all the stakeholders have approved what we believe should go into it. I will talk about estuary nutrient regions. That's a kind of a regulatory term. The Mosquito Lagoon is broken up into 3 regions, 1, 2, 3 in the DEP nomenclature. We call them north, central, and south just because it makes it a little easier to understand what we're talking about. So as I talk about some of the results, I'll be talking about the estuary nutrient regions, or ENRs. So this is what the loading looks like. We used a 12-year period. We calculated loading to the lagoon for a 12-year period, which kind of covers a good range of conditions from dry to wet and so forth. And most of your year-to-year variation is really rainfall driven. So when you kind of see the ups and downs of that has more to do with rainfall than anything else. But it just kind of gives you an idea of how things can fluctuate in the lagoon from year to year. The other thing that's kind of enlightening, one of the things that comes out of this process is we start to get a handle on where the load's coming from. So these pie charts show we have in the north ENR, we have 5 sources. So we have direct runoff, so what flows off the land surface; base flow, so what comes back to the lagoon by way of groundwater flow; point sources, so wastewater, effluent discharge; septic; and then just what comes down by way of rainfall. So you can kind of get a sense of, where is going to be the most effective way to spend the money, where the big source is coming from. You can see in this case, septic's only about 4%. So even if we got rid of all the septic, we're only getting rid of 4%. Point sources, 8%, it's a little bit more, but the cities and the counties have really all invested a lot already over the years in point sources. So that number is really a lot smaller than it could be, and it's harder to squeeze a lot more out of that. So we're really kind of, our big things we're going to be going after are the direct runoff and the base flow, and those were the big portions. As we move into the central lagoon, we don't have any, we have fewer septics, and we have no point sources. So you can kind of see the pie chart shifts a little. as we get into the South Lagoon, we really have no urbanization. So we obviously have no point sources, no septics, and even more of it just comes from rainfall. And I'll talk about why all this is important in a moment. So that kind of summarizes the loading portion of it. The next thing that we did was look at water quality targets. DEP had proposed water quality targets in 2014. We as a group decided, do we just want to use those, or do we want to reevaluate those? When we first started the process, the group decided that we wanted to reevaluate those. The main difference between what DEP had proposed in 2014 and what we're proposing for this reasonable assurance plan, which would have to get approved by EPA, is that we have a longer period of record for data. So DEP used data only up to 2008 because that's what they had available. We had up through 2016. We had more water quality data, more seagrass data. So it's essentially the same process, the same methodology that we used, just different numbers. And whereas they're different in the kind of grand scheme of things, they're still fairly similar. Once we had established targets and we had our loads, then the next step was to determine load reductions. So what we're proposing is about a 15% load reduction across the 3 different lagoons segments, the ENRs. That's a total of about 31,000 pounds per year of total nitrogen. That's a lot of nitrogen to remove from the lagoon. And then the corresponding phosphorus that comes with that is a little over 2,000 pounds. But I can tell you that whatever we do to achieve nitrogen, we'll be achieving phosphorus. And so if we get the nitrogen, we'll get the phosphorus. The other thing that I think is important to point out is we've been extremely transparent in this whole process. So we've had 15 plus progress meetings, a lot of feedback and a lot of reports and so forth, and have gotten a lot of good feedback from that very large stakeholder group. So we've tried our very best to be as transparent as possible with it. I'll go now into the projects. So we have that 31,000 pounds per year nitrogen reduction that we want to achieve. That's a lot of nitrogen, and you're just not going to do it with small projects. So as we started to evaluate how can we do this, our focus was really on bigger things. And really, because so much money has been spent already on the treatment, on the wastewater treatment side, we're really looking more at the non-point sources. So we're large areas because of the economies of scale and how much can be achieved. Trying to treat untreated areas just because you get more bang for the buck there. We were looking for a spread across all of the stakeholders so that kind of everyone had a piece of the pie. And then we were also looking at the lowest life cycle costs, so not just capital costs, but what is it going to cost to maintain some of these. So that was what was going on, driving us. I won't go through all the projects. I'll go through kind of some representative ones. The first one was a very fortunate project. The one sticking point is we still don't have FAA approval, which we think we'll get, but we have an existing borrow pit that's in just the right spot for us, so it saves a lot of the cost because all the excavation is done. We just have to divert water into it. That project, that will get us about 1,300 pounds per year in nitrogen reduction at about $20 per pound. And if you're familiar with these types of projects, that's extremely cost effective. You'll be hard pressed to find too many projects that are down at that level. And then likewise, the second project, which we're calling the 10th Street Treatment Facility, treats a much larger area. We're getting estimating about 5,600 pounds per year from that one. Partly because of the size of it, we're also getting very, very cost-effective treatment at about $20 per pound.
Before you go on, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
Mr. Rechtenwald, how does this line up with the widening of 10th Street down there and that property, the corner, what we're talking about,
Yep.
the negotiating? Does that play into this? Is that what
Yes,
this
this lines up really well. This is a situation where we're working with, we already have property for the 10th Street. There's a developer we're working with, along with the city of Edgewater, to swap property. They have for like a 2-for-1. We happen to have bought property right on the intersection. They would like to have that intersection, and behind that, they'll give us twice the amount of property which would then take care of not only our stormwater needs from the 10th Street project, but would also roll right into this project where we would be able to treat. And that's being able to get that close to the lagoon and treat the water would give it its maximum effect. So this is something that's really timely, and it's, again, it's the ability of a couple of departments here to work together and recognize, hey, you know, we need this, and we have this opportunity with this road construction project to go through. So we're working.
If I can add, that was a already to-go project. They asked us to consider this, and we put the brakes on a to-go project because this could be better for the environment, because this is twice the land. So Ms. Denny's the one that brought this to us originally, but we stopped in our tracks when normally you would continue through on a project because we thought this could do more for the environment.
Well, it actually sounded too good to be true when I was
It did
approached.
at first. Yeah.
And I kept saying, this can't be, and I took the calls a couple times and didn't forward, and finally said, okay, I'll take the meeting. We took the meeting. I'm like, oh my goodness, this can actually work, and pulled the manager out of a meeting, and here we are. But if this is a really good option,
Great
especially
option.
considering the infrastructure where we are now.
Yeah,
Okay.
outstanding project. And kind of as I go through these projects, sort of pay attention to the dollars per pound, and you'll see just how good this one is. The next project, we're not actually proposing it to be a part of the plan. It was one of the things that we wanted to do when we evaluated options was to have some redundancy. Sometimes as you go to implement a project, you run into problems that you don't anticipate, so we wanted to have some backups. This was really kind of a backup to the 10th Street project. So it's in there if something were to happen, but it's not one that we're going to suggest be a part of the plan because it's treating the same area. These next several are primarily in Edgewater. The first one is the biggest one because it treats the largest area, mostly in Edgewater. So it's a bioreactor. So we're using a media to get denitrification, to get the nitrogen out. This one would have to be pumped, so it's a little bit higher maintenance costs. But we're, a very large project in the fact that it's achieving 3,900 pounds per year. But you see already we went from $20 per pound to $50 per pound. So that kind of gives you a sense of just how good those first two projects are in terms of cost effectiveness. These next few I won't spend much time on because they're really redundancy for if we can't do option 4, we have options 5, 6, and 7, similar to the Elizabeth Street, kind of backups in case something happens during implementation. Another option that we looked at was septic to sewer. So so septic to sewer really makes some sense when you're really close. So the closer you are to a water body, the more nitrogen reduction you're going to receive.
Can I just stop you for a minute here? This map is kind of hard. The top pink line up there, tell us what we're looking at. Are we looking at New Smyrna, Edgewater, Oak Hill? What are we looking at there in the green section?
Actual city limits. This is a figure that actually came out of your 2015 water quality plan.
I know, I just want to go on the record with what we're looking at. I know what we're looking at. We just need to get a.
She just wants you to say it. Say
I want this
Edgewater.
on the record.
It's all Edgewater.
Yeah, right here.
You got Corey Estates is the very top. Circle right up here.
And the pink line there, is that a road or is that a city? That's a city delineation, or is that just our?
So the colored polygons are all areas that were looked at for potential septic to sewer. So the pink or purple one to the farthest north, all the way down into Oak Hill, the brown area.
Okay.
And the one that the county had considered as, I don't know if they were necessarily ranked, but the one that probably would be the highest ranked would be Indian Harbor.
Point out Indian Harbor on there.
Yeah, it's the yellow area.
Right here, I believe.
Is that right, Mike?
Right there.
Yeah. So you're looking at, just to kind of put this in the comparison, depending on how close the septics are to the water body, you're in the ballpark of maybe 15 to 25 pounds per year per household. As you get further away from the water body, it drops quite a bit from there just because of the natural attenuation you get. So the big projects that I said were $20 per pound. If you were to put that in terms of dollars per pound per year, those would be maybe $200 to $300 per pound per year. These septic projects are going to be on the order of $900 to $1,500 per pound per year. So we're kind of, overall in this plan, we're trying to look at the most cost-effective way to get that 31,000 pounds per year. Septics are kind of not highest on the list, but as you'll see, we'll probably have to do a little bit of that just to get the balance that we need. Moving further south, we have the Ariel Canal, and that's actually an improvement of a project that the county has already done, so we're just kind of trying to squeeze some more reduction out of that one. This would be a new one, so the Lighthouse Cove Treatment Facility. Moving further south, doesn't treat as big of an area, only 420 acres, and that's why we're only at about 760 pounds per year. But still, reasonably cost-effective at $80 per pound. We looked at dragline ditch restoration since there had been some of that going on, and we wanted to see if it was going to be beneficial to continue to do that from a nutrient reduction. Without going into a lot of the ins and outs, what we got to is we aren't at a point yet, the research isn't at a point where DEP can grant reduction credits for that. There's some other issues with it as well. We made some suggestions for maybe how it could be in the future, but for right now, that's not going to be one of the recommended options. That won't be a part of the restoration efforts, at least that would get credited. Option 12 is an interesting one. So if you recall the South ENR, that's pretty much completely undeveloped, and it's hard to do better than what Mother Nature is doing. But interestingly, it receives flow from the Haulover Canal, so it receives flow from the North IRL at times of the year. The North IRL has a TMDL and a BMAP, and so what we determined is...
Okay, let's stop here. You're using a lot of acronyms. I mean, I served on the Indian River Lagoon Council, I understand this, but you've got to explain your acronyms and where's the North IRL, the TMDL, and all these nutrient overloads? Will you explain those acronyms?
Okay, sure.
So let's not use acronyms with all, and the BMAP, that's...
My apologies. So the southern part of the lagoon is connected to the northern Indian River Lagoon through the Haulover Canal. The northern Indian River Lagoon already has a process in place where the loads are going to be reduced, so the pollutants are going to be reduced. So we made a calculation for...
But define that. Define where the North Indian River Lagoon is, in your words. Are we talking Ormond Beach? Are you talking Brevard County? Define what you think the North Indian River Lagoon is.
So it would be in Brevard County.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of Volusia County in it, but it's primarily, the contributing area to that portion is primarily in Brevard County. So as that water body achieves its pollutant reduction goals, there will be less pollutants going into the South ENR. And what we've calculated is that it's well in excess of the goal, the load reduction goal that's needed for the southern part of the Mosquito Lagoon. So when the North Indian River Lagoon achieves its goal, that will more than satisfy the goal for the South ENR, which is fortuitous because it's hard to do anything in the South ENR since there isn't any urbanization there. So we've made that calculation, we've provided that to DEP, and it appears that they will be okay with that, but that still has to be finalized. The third option is programmatic changes. So the way, just like in a basin management action plan, DEP gives you certain credits for public education, those types of things. You currently are getting a 3% reduction credit because you have a fertilizer ordinance and you do other public education oriented things. If you're not doing quite enough yet with Florida Yards and neighborhoods, you're doing some things, but they would like to see a little bit more, and it's not very much at all. So, and that would get you from 3% 3% to 6%, and that would be the most cost-effective money you would spend in this entire thing. So we're kind of assuming that that is going to take place. And as you can see, that's a fairly big number. So a 6% reduction across the urban area would be 4,100 pounds per year. So it's a good piece of nitrogen there. This table shows what we're recommending of all the options I talked about. This is what we're recommending is going to go into the draft reasonable assurance plan. So we have about a half dozen or so projects that would be in the $10 million range, and then that will get us to. I'll come back to this table in a second, but just to show you where that gets us. So in the north and central portions of the lagoon, that would get us about 17,000 of the 19,000 pounds per year that we need. Again, the south segment we feel is going to be taken care of by the North Indian River Lagoon segment. So that's about $10 million worth of projects there to get us to the 17,000, and then we're going to suggest using septic to sewer, not a specific septic to sewer project, but just kind of an unspecified septic to sewer project that could be implemented in any of that, say, a 15-year time period to get us to that delta. That's probably going to be the next most cost-effective thing we can do. And you'll probably do some small projects along the way. We'll track those, but those tend to be on the order of tens of pounds per year, or maybe 100 pounds per year. They just, it's hard to get those to add up to 2,000 pounds per year of a reduction. And then likewise, if we get I showed you what the projects would achieve in terms of total nitrogen, and these are what the same projects would achieve in terms of total phosphorus. So that gets us more than there. We have presented all this information previously, kind of the same focus on an overview of the project and the overview of the projects that would go into the plan. February 5th to Edgewater, February 26th to Oak Hill, March 13th to New Smyrna Beach. And generally, there wasn't a whole lot of comments. Edgewater had some questions about funding, baffle boxes, and the use of bivalves. Oak Hill also had questions about funding and septic to sewer. New Smyrna Beach had questions about the targets, the water quality targets, funding, and just the total amount to achieve the load reductions. But they were all, generally very supportive of the project. The two final pieces then that would go into the reasonable assurance plan would be monitoring compliance and reporting. So as we're going forward in time, making sure that things are going in the lagoon the way that we expect them to be going in the lagoon. And then there's an adaptive management. So if things aren't going as we expect, as we implement these projects, how do we adapt? What how do we change course a little bit? So those are the other pieces that will be a part of the reasonable assurance plan. And with that, I will take questions.
Ms. Denny's.
Thank you. We've been working on this for 4 years? The first meeting was in 2014 at the Ocean Center with all the cities, and our stakeholders. And this again is one of those worlds where you need a cheat sheet for acronyms because it's a different language. But looking at all the alternatives in every meeting that I've ever sat in on regarding water quality, if you wanted to make the biggest impact, you start as close as you can to the source, to the water source. So we don't want to go inland. I mean, some of these might look good at first blush, but when you look at the map, look where the blue is. The blue is down south. That's going to have the biggest impact on the lagoon. So going forward, we can, and there, some of them are just options. I'll leave it there. There's a couple really good ones up there. But again, down in that Oak Hill area is where you're going to see the greatest rate of return. And Dwayne DeFries, I think he worked with you. Did he work with you during all these meetings? Dwayne DeFries is the executive director of the Indian River Lagoon Council. And speaking with him about this in the whole council, which is several counties, and we have both water management districts and the DEP that serve on this council, when we talk about this, the discussion has been that basically Oak Hill, I'm gonna go back to that one, Oak Hill is a poster child for the quickest rate of return on cleaning up the lagoon because it's concentrated. You keep saying urban, and I don't want to or rural, what are you're using rural. I don't want to leave that out there because it's a very concentrated situation down there in Oak Hill. Not the whole place, but there's very concentrated pockets that will yield a great rate of return in cleaning up our lagoon and looking at the total daily maximum load with this nutrients that are coming into our lagoon. And while it's the south you think is a little clear, we know that that's where brown tide comes from, and they're dealing with that right now. We get those winds that come up, the brown tide's going to be right back into our lagoon. And it's interesting when you started at first the numbers from 2008 and 2016. I'm glad you moved to the 2016 because I don't think we had the brown tide like we did and the algae issues back in 2008. So things are getting worse. There is a fix. It's going to cost some money, but there's ways, I think, collaboratively with all of our partners, and especially the council and the water management districts. I know I'm in, and I think Abby from the St. John River Water Management District, talking to her, I was just talking to her last week, trying to work on a couple other grant opportunities for that particular area. I'm going to push open every door that I can and appreciate the agencies working with us. There's an answer here. We'll find the funding. We'll do the right thing to make the biggest impact the way we can. It's gonna take some time, but thank you, seriously, that this has been meeting after meeting after meeting for years. This is a great report. Mr. Rechtenwald?
I was just going to add that having these plans, having our county water quality plan, and this is a subset of that plan, is what's bringing money. You know, you had mentioned earlier in some of the other items, money has come to other projects. They have been in these type plans. So that's why this is also important. As Mr. Cunningham said, it's well, we're taking a proactive stance. The state will recognize that, the DEP and the other agencies, and that will help in our efforts to get money for these projects, because that's one of the main questions they will ask right off the bat is it in your reasonable assurance plan? Is it in your water quality plan? So these type of things are very, very important to have set up, because it gives the state some ability to also program money as well. There is no, like there is the Department of Transportation, we've kind of talked about that in water. You don't have the same kind of systems in the other state agencies, but we've really worked hard with them. Mike Ulrich in particular and Judy have met a lot with those staffs, and they're developing that type of system. And we're going to be on the forefront because they're going to use our plans in order to make their budget projections and, you know, the money that they're going to give. So that's what makes this very, very important.
Just one quick comment. One thing that I've said for years and years and years and years, at least 20 years, is that when you look and you see that rainfall accounts for 5 times the amount of nitrogen that the septic does, until we put, now I'm just talking about, excuse me. Just let me make my point.
Go ahead.
Until we put umbrellas over the water levels, we're not going to stop the nitrogen from going in. And no doubt some of the runoff is caused by the nitrogen that's deposited on our lawns and so forth, also runs off. It's not all just fertilizer that causes that. So we have to take an effort where we can, and where we can make the biggest, as we call it, the biggest bang for our buck. We need to go for the bigger sources, and I think that's what you're trying to point out here. But people overlook that the nitrous oxide that's created by the process of lightning is a big depositor of nitrogen, and 4% is from septic. So the big bad septics do eliminate over 75% of it is put back into some other place. Although I think we need to make a real good effort, the closer the septics are to the water, those are the ones I think we need to concentrate on. When you've got a septic sitting within 100 feet or less, a septic system of a water body, I think those are the ones we should target and go after, those specific ones where we can, that make a big difference there. If you can eliminate all of that, it make a huge difference in your, so anyway, just my point of comment. So thank you very much, very detailed, and thanks for bringing us up to date.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now we move to one of the most exciting presentations that you'll see, one that I spent many hours poring over a book, kind of like this one, which I've always referred to as our financial annual audit, but is really not an audit. It's referred to as a comprehensive annual financial report. So go ahead and excite us all.
I'll do my best. I'll make it fast. Maybe that'll be exciting.
That will help a whole bunch.
Okay.
And
All
your people back there behind you know my feelings on the timeliness of this report.
I'm sure they do. I'm Donna DePeister, Deputy County Manager, CFO. And Mr. Chair and members of council, it is my pleasure to present to you the 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I always like to point out that this is a report that is prepared by the accounting staff. And I'd like to just take a minute, if I may, a second, to introduce Ryan Osowski, our accounting director, Lynn Rice, our assistant accounting director, and the other accounting folks, accountants that work very tirelessly in getting this report to you. They work all year long, making sure that the numbers that are presented to you are fairly presented and are accurate. And they include Terry Ruger, Shirley Liu, Miriam LeMay, Jennifer Madewell, Tiffany Alvarez, and Svetlana Reese, along with all the other folks that are in the accounting division. I don't need to tell you that by looking at the size of that report, it is a complicated document. There are a lot of rules and regulations that are constantly changing. This is a landscape that is constantly shifting, and we have to stay on top of all the new standards. In fact, there were 2 new standards that came out this year that we had to make sure that we were in compliance. Fortunately, this did not apply to us this year. However, we have to stay on top of all of them because something may happen and trigger one of these standards to be needed to be implemented. I also like to point out that we submit this report to the GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association. Now, that's our professional organization, and we receive the Excellence Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We have received that every year. In fact, when this one goes through, this will be our 40th year in receiving that report. Now, is that important? Yes, it is, because the bonding rating agencies look at this. And we usually meet with them at least once a year. We go over not only this report, but what we see in the future. And that keeps our ratings high. And if our ratings are high, our interest rates go low every time we go out for debt. And those last few debt issues that we've done very well on those interest rates. Finally, I'd like to point out also that we also, as a result of a requirement of the Auditor General, yet another requirement, we have to prepare a financial condition report. And this year, we're compared to other counties of our size and number, population, and financial, similar financial situations as we are in. And they look at trends over a 5-year period of our own trends and what we're seeing. And then this year we receive a favorable rating on our financial condition, which again is a very strong position to be in at this point in time. Needless to say, I know you've met your auditors, James Moore and Company. They're here today. They have given us an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can receive. It means that our financial report is fairly presented, and you can rely upon the numbers that are contained within. At this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to James Halloran from James Moore, who will take you through the rest of the report. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning still. I like that. Again, James Haller, James Moore & Company. I'd like to introduce my primary audit staff. Zach Chalifer is the concurrent partner on the engagement, and as well as Katie Walker, as well as the audit manager on the engagement. And also I'd like to thank all the staff from Volusia County. They always get everything ready for us. We have our own little cubicle there that we can sit in with some chairs that work sometimes, so we feel right comfortable as auditors. But I'll get right to the report because I see Chairman Carroll already looked at me saying, get through fast. Well, Donna stole my thunder on the certificate achievement. I was going to point out it was 40 years. And what's interesting about that, of our audit team, I was the only one that was born 40 years ago. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing for me, but I found that very interesting. In this large book that you have here, or if you look at it online, it'll be even larger. You'll see in there a number of different reports. So there's 5 different reports that are from James Moore and Company. The financial statements are the responsibility of Volusia County, as well as the management and finance staff. Our responsibility is to give an opinion on those financial statements in addition to these other reports. So the first one is the independent auditor's report on the financial statements. As mentioned before, that was an unmodified opinion. States that financial statements present fairly in all material aspects your financial position, results of operations, cash flows for the year ended September 30th, 2017. In addition, because you're under government auditing standards, the Auditor General requires you to be under government auditing standards. Not all states require their governments to be audited under government auditing standards, in addition to AICPA U.S. auditing standards. But the Auditor General does, and we had no comments in any of those reports related to internal control over financial reporting or compliance. You guys are subject to both federal single audit and state single audit due to the size, and we'll go through that in another slide, the size and magnitude of your federal and state grants that you receive. And we had no comments that were necessary in regards to your federal or state grants that were tested. There's additional report from the Auditor General. The Auditor General has a list of items that we're supposed to go through and respond back to them, and whether we have any comments related to those items, and there are no items in there as well. They also have an additional report that we need to disclose about whether you complied with the investment statutes, as well as the E-911 monies, how those were spent, if they were in compliance with those statutes, and we had no comments there as well. So no comments overall, no audit adjustments overall. So actually a very boring CAFR. What I always tell elected officials is read the front of the CAFR to get the executive summary and the management discussion analysis, and then go to the back, because the back is where if we had any type of findings, that's where you would find them, is in the back of the report. General fund, just a little bit on the numbers. As you know, the majority of your funds are restricted. So your special revenue funds, capital project funds, your debt service fund, all those have ties to them. They have restrictions on those. You cannot spend that money except for the purpose for that specific revenue source that's coming into that fund. So really the fund you have available for spending is your general fund. And at the end of the year, your total balance there is close to $71 million. And you'll see an amount up there called assigned. So that's really the remainder of your money. So about $65 million is assigned at the end of the year. The largest portion of that you guys have assigned will be carrying forward to your next year's budget. But you do have, inside that assigned fund balance, the county council years ago established a policy for emergency reserves. You're just below your 10% right there right now. You're about 9.7%, but still $19.4 million is what's sitting in your emergency reserve, which is impressive when you consider the 2 hurricanes that happened during this past year, that you still have that amount of cash available and on hand. Now, you got Irma stuff that's going to be coming into this year and some projects. They did delay some projects when the hurricanes came. You kind of had to do that. So other things of note, there's money in there, of course, for the Go to Zero initiative you guys have. There's about $8.1 million for going forward in that Go to Zero project, as well as the general fund for financial reporting purposes also combines, as you see a little asterisk at the bottom, EVAC, Hope Place, and the Economic Development Fund. So all those different funds as well, and all those monies have already been committed out into the future as well. So, as mentioned before, the Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA, they recommend as a minimum fund balance policy in your general fund 2 months, or approximately 16.7%. As you can see from the slide, you're currently at about 25%. That's down from the previous year, but that was a planned spend down of your general fund balance. So that's about 3 months is what you have set aside at the end of the year. So some big highlights for the year. You had a lot of federal and state funds. This doesn't even include, as that slide mentions, Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Irma, the 4-letter word, doesn't even include expenditures related to that yet. The way the FEMA department has set that up is those expenses will be tested next year based on when your grants were approved by FEMA. So even this year, you had close to $58 million in federal funds. The big chunk of that, of course, was Memorial Bridge as a non-recurring item. You typically always have a good amount in VOTRAN as well as the airport fund. But in Memorial Bridge is about 8.9. You'll probably have close to 20 million this year for Memorial Bridge, plus whatever we have related to Irma and Matthew. So, and this was the highest year that we could recall from the years we've done the audit for your federal and state funding. So next year will be even a larger dollar amount will be coming in. You asked me to keep it short, so that's what I did. But I will take any questions or comments, and I know majority of you guys we met with on a one-on-one basis as well, but anyone we did not meet with, we're always open for that meeting anytime you want.
Anyone on council questions? Mr. Deneen, you couldn't have any questions.
I don't have a question. I have something to add. First of all, I want to thank the staff. Number two, it's very exciting to us, internal. It's only exciting to the media when it's bad. And this is probably the most important function I have and the council has. Obviously, if I couldn't do this function, you wouldn't want me here. And if you couldn't do it, voters wouldn't want you here. Bottom line is, this is the ultimate in confidence, and what separates American government in a lot of cases from other places is there's no issue of corruption, there's no issue of mismanagement of money, and it is very important to us. Also, this is your opportunity to have a third party review what my office does. I will tell you that it seems routine. There's nothing routine about it. This is not an automatic pilot. This is a very complicated budget. We work very hard. This is our primary responsibility to make sure that all money that public gives us is accounted for. And it's spent, Mr. Chair, in accordance to the way that the council has directed. So I'm very pleased. I'm very proud of what we do. And I'm glad that it's only exciting to us. Thank you.
Ms. Cusack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank staff, Donna DePeister, for her leadership in our finances, and to say to all of our staff who is involved in making sure that we appropriate funding and that appropriation is spent in the manner in which we have directed you, and that we have balanced our budget. We've crossed every I and dotted every T. And then we have dotted everything. So somebody's not asleep. So I just want you to know how much, as a council, we appreciate your leadership, Mr. Deneen, and surrounding yourself with competent people, and our audit proves that they are competent and doing what we have asked them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. I think we all feel that same way, and I'm thankful that you have set previously the bar high enough on the reserves, as we can see what 2 hurricanes can do to you.
Yes.
They can wipe out a large percent of those reserves in a few days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that they've always stressed in the Florida Association of Counties, the cities, League of Cities, is that coastal cities and coastal communities need higher than the 10 or 15% or 16% as you recommend. And glad that we're doing that. So it's not money there that just is not for a purpose. And it really came in handy because we still have outstanding, I'm guessing, over $30 million counting 2018 and what we had still from Matthew to be a guess. So
that's correct.
So that's just a guesstimate, which is good. And Zach, sorry you didn't get to speak today, but we recognize that you're here. Thank you very much. Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Thank all of you and the staff. You did a great job getting the numbers, verifying those numbers that they had questions on. I know what the process is, and I know the time it takes, and we appreciate that. Thanks, Donna.
Just one real quick thing. I forgot one thing. The smaller version of the CAFR, which is called the Popular Annual Financial Report, is also out on the web, and we've made copies of this and handed those to Debbie and Darla. So if you all need one, you can. It's a summarized version. We call it the baby CAFR. So just wanted you to know that y'all have some down there.
This is a good tool for constituents that want to understand. If they want, those that are really interested, you can read this and understand it, and it's not too cumbersome.
Well, maybe the person who complained to me about having old information on there will understand there's sometimes a reason to have old historical information on there, but I got an email that our website and having old information on there is ridiculous, so I didn't respond to him. So if you're listening out there, now you know why. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll move to item 5. I guess this would be Dr.
That's me,
Lowry.
I'm ready. I'm ready to nominate Wanda Van Dam. If you'll notice on the form, she had missed several meetings, but she'd had some surgery. And I just talked to her this morning, and she said she should be somewhat fully functional in the days ahead and be able to continue on. That's good because she's one of the unincorporated, and it's kind of hard to get from that area. So anyway, with that, I'll nominate her.
That's Wanda Van Dam?
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam has been no replacement to John Claude.
You just about messed up.
Only a pastor would probably have caught that one. Any objection to the nomination of Wanda Van Dam to serve on the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission? Hearing no objection, that a nomination is approved. And thank you, and thank her for her service. At this, and have no one wishing to speak at the public participation point. So we'll now move to discussions and comments from the county manager.
Mr. Chair, only in that we passed out these 2 logos. I had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Northey yesterday, and these are 2 logos they're considering for the River to Sea Trail, and she'll be stopping in or talking to you on the phone about what you believe should be the one. So I'll let you tell her, and then they're going to decide which one they like.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Eckert.
Nothing, sir.
Thank you. And we'll start from the council. We'll start with Ms. Cusack today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, we have the 2 things. I would like to request a resolution for Mrs. Oretha Bell, who was a city commissioner for many years in New Smyrna Beach City Commission. She passed away, and they will be funeralizing her this weekend. And so we'd like to have, if possible, a resolution, something of acknowledgement from our council.
I think that's definitely in order. I remember seeing her at many of the meetings.
Very
over the years.
active in New Smyrna Beach area and in all of Volusia County. She was a stellar servant who served her community and this county well.
Okay. Mr. Deneen can make sure that happens.
All right. And second, there is a planning, the Community Alliance, which is created by the Florida statute. And I've been serving on that Community Alliance, DCF, and there is 4 more meetings left in this year. And I was wondering if we have the opportunity to elect a substitute. We can have a second person to serve. I cannot attend. We have 3 more meetings, and I won't be able to attend those meetings. They're in Bunnell. I've talked with my colleague here, who has consented graciously to serve. And so Billy Wheeler, I'd like to ask if she could be nominated as the assistant to attend those meetings in Bunnell, if that would be acceptable.
You've
If that's a
nominated
motion?
Billy Wheeler to serve
Yes.
as an alternate
Yes.
on the community.
The Community Alliance.
Does she know where Benella is?
So I want her
She
to
might
be able to
pronounce
go
it
the-
differently.
the scenic route to Bunnell.
Is there any objection to that? Hearing no objection, that nomination stands. Thank you. And thank you, Billy.
That's all I have.
I thought maybe you were going to let Deb have another one. Speaking of Deb, Ms. Denny's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but no, thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff for coming to New Smyrna Beach to the Brandon Center this past week and giving a coastal update. And I found it interesting. I learned what we're getting ready to do with the inlet down there in Ponce Inlet is amazing. They're going to dredge that down from 12 feet down to 15 feet in some areas. That is a very welcome thing. Thank you for all the staff that showed up. and answered a lot of questions. It was wonderful. Just one question, after we got done with that water quality, that great presentation, where do we go from here? I mean, we just had a presentation, so now what do we do?
Well, George, you get into it, but one of your biggest issues is this creates the opportunity, because of the plan we put out, to now actively go after grants that directly relate to water quality. George?
The consultant, along with Judy, will go ahead and take that plan, now that everyone has seen it, and will submit it to the DEP, and they will review it along with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and who also has to, and I think some other federal agencies that will look at it. And if they approve it, it'll come back as a plan that instead of what they call a B map, instead of being, like they said, told what projects you're going to have to do for an impaired water body, they're going to say, okay, we agree with this procedure, and go forth with this plan, and you're basically committing to that, or you risk being put on their plan. So we'll go forward, and when we get it back and everyone agrees, then we'll start going after these projects.
So we're exercising home rule over our own lagoon waters, and we're coming up with our own plan, and
Don't tell anybody, they may stop us.
Yeah, let's keep that, yeah.
Yeah, don't tell anybody we're doing that, or there'll be legislation to stop it.
But it's a very proactive, it's a very
Exactly.
positive, proactive approach.
It is, and like I say, I think that our staff's relationships with some of the state staff is helping us get this funding, get in line, and I think other places will probably be coming to see what we're doing.
Right.
So they figure, why are we getting to the head of the line? So
Because
trying
you
to get
have
out ahead.
Because you have the plan, you have a better shot at,
Right.
these grants will get a higher priority now.
Exactly.
Dr. Lowry,
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
How much time do I have here?
If you're talking about Sunrail, as long as you want.
Well, I think everybody's aware of the meeting that we had down there. I was trying to get the motions, the amendments that we have, and I offered to on the agenda review, and they decided to put it off until the end of the meeting when we had, member comments. I made 2 motions regarding Sunrail and our involvement with it, and neither amendment was seconded, which didn't surprise me at all. I keep getting this verbal reassurance that there's no way in the world would Volusia County ever suffer in any way in 2021, and I keep reminding them that, considering that Mayor Dyer is a lawyer, that I want it in writing and get it passed. And it didn't happen, and what we're trying to do is just make sure that we aren't going to pay anything more than what we agreed to when we got into this. Hold on a second. My cell phone rings into my hearing aid. So Pat Northey was just calling me. Pat, call me back later, will you? But it's just really frustrating, and going on with them down there, and it leads us to wonder what we're going to do next here. And I keep hearing everybody saying, outside of the council, we need to just file a lawsuit. Well, that's easier said than done. I've talked to Mr. Eckert about that, with the possibilities of a lawsuit, a dispute resolution. So we're doing so. I think we're going to just have to keep working forward, and I will keep fighting for these amendments. We need to get them passed. Wondering what in the world's going to happen. Here we are, the Berry Station, it's a high ridership, but it's almost like the fact that we are just, to them, a minor member because we have one station, one stop, and we have a requirement on some things that have to be unanimous votes, and I am ready to just start saying no. And I've done this on a couple of other occasions regarding the consultant study. We're not putting any money out for that. That kind of, I think, is makes them unhappy. But we're not out $30,000 or $50,000 like they originally wanted. They are looking forward to hiring a consultant to move forward on this plan, is taking it over. As far as I'm concerned, no matter what happens, it's still going to be a commission on training wheels, and that's about what we are. I mean, we don't really run the train because Florida Department of Transportation is running this whole train. We're just meeting and reviewing a lot of reports, and I think there's numbers that are coming out that are troubling to the manager, myself, and Mr. Eckert, that we need to start probably doing some public records requests to get some answers, because it's not adding up. It's not adding up, and we need to wonder what our expense is going to be. I think that Mr. Deneen will be meeting with Mr. Harrison, Jim Harrison from the county, Orange County, but it is interesting that their attitude towards us is, I think we are the redheaded stepchild. And as much as I would love to see this train continue going on and coming into the land where we've agreed to, we have this. I keep getting questions like, well, what is Volusia County doing to lobby for this? Well, and the manager will tell you that FDOT has said we are not to be lobbying for this. This is their job. This is the things that they need to be doing, and they're not doing it. But we're really forbidden from going up to Washington and lobbying for Sunrail. That is their duty. That is what they have said. We are prohibited from doing that. So we'll just keep going. So if you have any other suggestions, folks, but I will just continue, and hopefully with your support, to continue on being a thorn in the side of the people down there. But
that's what I think. Personally, I think you should be the thorn and vote against everything. They've shown us no respect. We have 1.5 miles of proposed 60-something miles.
Yeah, 61 miles.
61 miles, and we have 1.5 miles of it, and they don't really care. And when you have an operation that cannot even cover the cost of issuing a ticket,
right?
Give me a break. I mean, I think a lot of us could be Monday morning quarterbacks now and look back and say, what did we get into? But we did it with the full understanding of what we would be receiving, which we're not. And therein, to me, lies a big question that I would just vote no on everything and say, you're not, well, you know what I'd do. You're just too nice, maybe. You're much nicer than I would probably be, because I'd say,
well, actually, I would probably be the vice chair, but for some reason I got passed over at this meeting. So obviously I'm not a very nice person to them down there.
But anyway, I think that's that's not all we can do. You need to look at the other options. They're not going to look for the money to extend the line to the land. I don't think that's in, and because the overtures that we see and the expenses, as I saw that were reported, I guess in an email or a report, that you and Mr. Eckert estimate that those are going to be 3 to 5 times greater than what they're saying it will be.
Right.
Yeah, that's a dispute right now. We've come up with like 5 times the amount.
Right.
So that's huge, and maybe we just tell them we'll give them back their 1.5 miles, and they can not come across the river, and we won't get on their train.
Mr. Chair.
I think that the train will always be coming into DeBerry.
Well, the tracks are there.
And the tracks are there. But, I mean, we're really stuck into this till 2036. 2021 is when the commission takes over.
Right.
And so we need to get this done. It's been over 500 days ago when Mayor Dyer came forward and said, bring some amendments to us and we will work on this. Well, it's been 400 days since the amendments have been sitting on the desk down there, on the staff or the other commissioner's desk, wherever they are, but they are not moving forward. They told me to go talk to the Secretary of Transportation, and John Booker and I went up there, scheduled an appointment, and of course you know that the Secretary didn't show up with no excuse. There was no apology for, I'm sorry I couldn't make it, the dog died, whatever excuse that could have been brought forward. So,
Well, if you look at it, we were roughly 20% of the original mileage proposed if we'd have gotten to the land station, because that's another 11 miles or something like that, then we would have been having a fair share. But to me, it makes no sense that we would have to pay 20% of the funding cost with
or
a mile
20% or more.
more with a mile and a half worth of track and service. But anyway, Mr. Dean, you have
Only a final comment, and that is that, first of all, I'm very proud of Mr. Passion. You should be. I was at that meeting. A couple of us were at that meeting. He was not a pushover. He was very aggressive. He did it with dignity, but they got the message that we're done, okay? We will come up with a strategy. I know that Ms. Patterson and I talked about actually coming maybe with a more formal strategy after. There's a couple other things I want to do to get some information and see if there's any avenue to fix this. I do think we have come to the fork in the road. I don't think it'll be just us going there and complaining. I think we're going to have to take some real affirmative action. They are, here's your problem. Their insistence on not dealing with our issue puts our budget at jeopardy. We already have some real issues coming up with the homestead and all that. You had when the original council voted for this, the maximum debt by 2021 that we would be responsible for was $7 million. We believe it's closer to 40 right now. And that was with 61 miles in operation. You only have 31 in operation right now. So this is on a magnitude you cannot comprehend on how much money is going to disappear down there. If we stay with that 20% for the capital side, it could be very expensive. And here's the issue, and I think this is the thing that they're cavalier and we're not. And that is, their citizens don't risk paying for something they didn't get. You're the only county where your citizens, because they have not changed this in writing, and like I used to say, a union president once told me, faded ink is better than faded memories. I don't care how much they say. That contract obligates you to a percentage, and they know it. And bottom line is, your citizens are responsible for a payment for something they didn't get. You'd be paying their bills in the other counties.
and we have no recourse to counteract.
We're looking at that. They're required under the contract to renegotiate. We do think we have some avenues. We want to do one more thing to investigate, and then we're going to have to bring you a strategy. That strategy, and one of the things about saying no to everything, and here's the great dilemma we're in. They keep wanting to add things to this system which add to the cost, and you have a percentage of that cost, and then they claim, well, you don't have anything to say because we're picking up the tab. We're FDOT. But the problem is FDOT turns it over to you in 2021 with a system that's already built. Every time they talk about expanding this thing over weekends or hours, you know, this is a system where the more you run, the more you owe. Especially when you've got a system where you get no revenue from the tickets.
Right.
So we are very concerned. I am extremely concerned about the future of this system. And I've never been associated with a system where taxpayers could get taxed for pay for something they didn't even get. So we are taking it very serious. But I do think that Mr. Patterson did a great job in making them understand we're done just sitting there trying to make it work. We're going to have to do something aggressive.
Well, and I don't have the answer. I mean, off the cuff, I would just threaten to say, okay, take your track and we're out, and relieve us of our responsibility. I can't believe that there wasn't something in the contract that gave us an escape of paying for something, not having to pay for something we didn't get. There has to be something in the contract, I would think.
It's difficult because the contract the contract we worked on, Mr. Eckert especially worked on, was to try and make this the best contract we could for the county, and it was not in our favor before. It's better than it was. Mr. Eckert's the one that built in the only escape you have is in 2036. And so that is it. Because
I won't be here then, so I'm not gonna worry about that,
So-
that escape.
we do believe it's changed
You have
when,
to get
we do believe they breached the contract. And so we do think there may be an avenue there.
But if they've breached the contract, I think it's time to fish, cut bait, or get off the train, jump off the train. Pat, you know what to do. I mean, you know the situation we're in. I trust you to make the right decisions to represent us. And thank you for going over there, taking the beatings. And I don't know, it wouldn't help to give another council letter other than expressing our displeasure. I mean, I'm sure you've done it, but at least it would say you have the backing of the council from the manager, the attorney, and all of us. A letter just says it's time to recognize and address our issues that I know you say it, but
I don't think it would hurt to have a letter, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that makes it clear from the council that you as a group are never going to allow your citizens to pay for something they didn't get.
Right.
And I think he can say that, but I've tried to make that clear in representing the council, because our form of government's different, that they have to understand our citizens are at risk, they're not. I don't think that would hurt coming from the council.
I think something like that, if you get something like that created so that we can sign it and send it and hand deliver it, Pat, I know it may
Well,
be.
I think also the News Journal editorial, I know that Pat Northey has come up with a piece that kind of says, here's what we wanted when she was on the council when this came forward, to let people know. And I think it's amazing. At the end of the meeting, the story was covered by the News Journal up here, but Orlando Sentinel, nothing.
That's a big shock.
Yeah.
That's facetious.
Now there was a guy there videotaping because he wanted, because they want Saturday service and Sunday service and night service, and they wanted, if somebody's having a group that's mad about something, they want to have a small riot in downtown Orlando, they want a free bus, free Sunrail service, or just crazy stuff.
Well, I told you, I would have ridden it to the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council meeting, which one of the stops is right there. But I would have had to leave home at 7 o'clock to catch the 8 o'clock train.
We've done that.
And you did that?
Yeah, multiple times, yeah.
But you have to get there because there's no 8:30 train, no 9 o'clock train.
Then you have to wait afterwards.
And you have to hang out. But you get so much work done on the train.
Oh, geez.
No, it's the waiting.
Actually, the one thing about it is right now, they are no longer, do you hear talk of Sunrail, Phase 2 North, which is DeLand, is Phase 3, which is to the Orlando Airport.
Right, and that's where the traffic will be generated, and then maybe can cover the cost of those tickets.
And the Osceola County piece will be opening up here soon.
So,
and there's 3 stops or 4 stops going into Osceola County. We don't know what in the world that's going to cost, what costs are going to be associated with that. And I'm sure that right now FDOT is just can't wait till 2021 to get out from underneath this albatross. And it's going to be around forever, that's for sure.
Well,
and come 2036, I don't want to be in the position, that we're still fighting this battle up in 2036.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I agree with the letter. I think that's a really good idea. But when's the next Sunrail Commission meeting?
May.
What if we showed up as a council?
When do we all go?
What if we all showed up, and I see Jim Cameron putting the thumbs up, we bring in the Daytona Chamber, for those of us that have been fighting this, trying to get some attention this long, and you know what? If the media is not going to cover it, you can do live Facebook audio. I think if a lot of people show up to a Sunrail Commission, we all show up, And when our representative, Councilman Patterson, is representing the good people of Volusia County, and he is fighting the fight for all of us, it's just not happening in Volusia County. It's not physically happening here, but he's representing us there. So maybe if we just get a bunch of people, Jim Cameron, to turn on that phone for some live audio feed on Facebook and get the comments or lack of, but go on. It's time to go on the record. This is political, so it's time for some political posturing. I think we could do that.
And
I'll go.
we can tag Buddy Dyer because he has a great, and the city of Orlando, they have a great following on Facebook.
I'm
250,000
in.
people.
Do we know what date, Pat?
I know it's set, but I can't remember the date.
May 29th.
May 29th.
Right?
Well, we can consider that at the next meeting, maybe think about something like that.
For those of us that can.
Pardon?
For anybody that can.
We'll draft the letter
Draft the
first,
letter.
and then we'll coordinate with all of you about the meeting.
Right.
I will tell you that the letter, and if I knew you were going to the meeting, would definitely help me when I go down and talk to them.
Okay,
I'm in.
I'm in. We're all in on the letter, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we'll take a bus.
Uh,
No, we'll take our own transportation. Okay, we'll work it out.
Okay, great. Anything- Mr.
Councilmember
Patterson?
Post is going to get at least 6 people in her VW Bug to go down there.
Yeah, he could reintroduce it again.
Dr. Lowry's going to bring his German Shepherds with him. Going to bring some chicks from Easter?
Oh, maybe.
Easter chicks. Pat, anything else?
Nope.
That's it. Ms. Post?
All right, I just wanted to say I hope everybody had a wonderful Easter. And I had a wonderful Easter. My daughter came home for the weekend, so that was nice. I also wanted to make sure and thank everyone that actually came out in force along the processional route for Lieutenant Caleb King during that funeral from all the way down US 1 into MIMS. There were many, many people that showed up on that processional route and as a community to support him and his family. So I personally greatly appreciate that, and what a show of community, so thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I didn't make this comment earlier, but I think this is worth repeating, and that is that the people in Volusia County who think we have some underhanded, undermining way of taking all the cars off the beach need to be made aware that if it were not for the action of this council, the staff, the attorney, we could be facing the usual and customary use of losing the beach. So those of you who follow the 15 or 20 Facebook post of beach driving anti-advocates, and we're all against it, tell them to post this. We saved your ability to drive on the beach by action. We could have taken inaction, and you wouldn't be driving on it ever again. But we took the action to ensure that the beach access. And hopefully somebody will put that in, and the SOBs can, that's the Sons of the Beach organization.
That's an organization.
Organization can read it. That didn't, I've never liked that organization name anyway.
Boy, this is going downhill
You're
fast.
back up on
Forgot to mention something.
You can't, no, if you forget it, you lose it. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I
Just interrupt. You just want to interrupt me. Go ahead.
Well, no,
playing.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Are you finished?
Is it my turn? Or-
What? No, it was my turn, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Forget it.
No, she had something she didn't.
I just forgot to mention, I had on my list here about the Caleb King funeral. I just wanted to say that the governor had everyone do the flags at half-staff, so that's fantastic that the governor's office actually was involved in that as well. And also I want to thank the council for doing a proclamation and making the day of his funeral Lieutenant Caleb King Day. So I want to thank the rest of the council for that as well.
Okay. Billy, go ahead.
Okay. I had several things last week or so. The Volusia Young Professionals.
Sorry, it's my bad.
Yeah.
I'd already figured you'd commented.
No, you passed right over me.
I did.
Yes.
I apologize.
That's why I kept saying, is it my turn? Just saying. Okay, so the Volusia Young Professionals Group, and this year's president is Owen Chittenden. His initiative was a hunger fight against hunger. And Volusia County was one of the sponsors, and I'm really, really proud about that. I attended the event, which was at the Shores Resort, and there were 14 tables with 10 people in each one, and we had production lines of packaging meals for students. He got with the schools to see which students really need it. And this is for after-school programs, as well as on the weekend that they would have food. There were 150 of us, and we did a total of 60,480 meals in 3.5 hours. We had production lines that were absolutely amazing. That was with 150 volunteers. So I did about 400 meals, I think, is the way it comes out. But it was just an awesome thing to see everybody come together. 60,000 meals that we were able to provide. So that was just great. It was a great initiative on his part, and I was glad that Volusia County was a part of it. Another thing I'd like to address. Recently, we were ranked number 44 in the category for healthiest counties. And, you know, I talked with this about with the manager. I'd like to know what we can do as a Volusia County. We should be leaders in this, that we can take this initiative and really try to change this. I don't like being 44th in anything, but definitely health.
Well,
Health.
For the council members that have been here, we've had some issues with this. I'd be glad, as I'd mentioned to you, I talked to the chair about this, to tack it on to our May 1st meeting, because you should have somebody here from the health department.
Right.
And also, I think you should see what we are doing, because a lot of times these programs, we are doing a number of programs, but we can also talk to you about some other initiatives.
Yeah.
This is one of our weak points, is it's surprisingly disappointing to see how badly we rank in in healthy lifestyles and healthy people in this county, considering, you know, Florida, people are out there moving around, but we have some real issues here.
Yeah.
And I know that, Joyce, I know you've been here when we've talked about it. It wouldn't hurt to bring it back up. I can tack it on to that meeting. The chair said it was okay, and we can have a short presentation, and then we can talk about any other initiatives you want to do. But it is one of the few areas, I think, that we're proud of a lot of stuff, but we really aren't proud of this. This is something we need to work on.
This is the picture we're using to represent our county. I think you bring up a good point.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
I just think we need to be the leader in our county to do this through the cities or whatever else to get everyone. I just think this is really important.
We'll
for
bring
us
up
to
that
do.
initiative, Ms. Chair, and we'll have some ideas of things that we might want to do. One thing we haven't done is reach out to the cities to actively participate with us, and maybe we should do that.
I mean,
We can come up with a little initiatives.
just to elaborate just briefly on that, we started years ago, Adam Behringer and I started the Mayor's Health and Fitness Challenge.
Yeah.
And from that, I think 6 of the cities now do the Health and Fitness Challenge. So we did start that. And if you look at that, and Ormond Beach received an award every year, I think New Smyrna Beach did, from the state as being healthy and having the initiative. So Deltona does it this year, Daytona does it, Deltona does it, New Smyrna, I think even Orange City may have started one. So we have the cities doing health and fitness challenges.
Yeah. But being 44th, we're still not doing enough. So we need to find.
And
Depends on how,
and there's
some of
several
that's
different
political.
categories. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that 44th.
Yeah.
Some of it is income and a lot of different things. So
But
I
those
think
are things that we need to address.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Okay, and my final thing, and it's not the least important, but back to the beach thing. As everyone knows, as I have certainly been alerted, there were poles constructed, you know, at the Hard Rock to implement something that went on 3 years ago, that was voted on 3 years ago. My question is, okay, I think there are 6 areas that we have designated no driving zones, and they have these poles. Our beach needs to look open and inviting, and I think that these polls present a different image. And I would like, I've talked with Jessica Winterwerp, and she had some really good ideas about even covering them with PVC, but having art on them. You know, I would like to someone to come up with some creative ideas for us. We've got the money with the additional funds that we have from the tolls. If we can get those, I mean, they're 10-foot tall monstrosities.
No problem at all. We really, I mean, first of all,
I talked to Mr. Deneen right after that as well, so we.
you saw Jessica's letter.
Yes.
And that was, she had planned on doing that as part, we have a program going on with all our signage. So she'll include the polls. She was planning on doing that before, and we'd be glad to do that. The one at the Hard Rock is a little bit unusual because they're close to each other. The Hard Rock talked to us. They wanted the original polls to go in first. And they asked also if they paid the difference, is there any way that they could upgrade them? We told them sure we'd be glad to, but Jessica's going to put together, and I'll have her come forward in the not too distant future, and she'll show you what we're doing to everything, including the polls.
Yeah, I just think it would,
done.
we're working so hard on it, changing the image, and I think this would just add to it. Thank you, Jessica. I know you can do wonders. Thank you. That was all I had.
We could make totem poles out of them, put starfish and pelicans, and I'm just kidding. We'll move on from that one.
We might.
I've been asked by our supervisor of elections to form our canvassing board members, and I'm asking Billy Wheeler to serve as an alternate. I'll serve on that as well for the upcoming elections in August and September. I forward each of you a copy of an unsolicited email. I forwarded it without comment on the offer we had to purchase the parking garage. I had asked the manager to explore that possibility. I know that we can't accept an offer just ad hoc without that, but I'm not so sure with the amount of money that we put in. First of all, I don't like government being involved in private industry where there's another way. And I think maybe we can look at it, see what our capital investment is in it, see if it makes sense to sell it, and use those funds in and around the Ocean Center for one of the projects that is being considered, or one of those things, because you have to use the funds somewhere. And we won't have to be updating the garage. We won't have to be worrying about collecting, but I don't know what it costs to build it. And then one of the other things we mentioned, that in the not very near future, but at some point in time, parking garages are probably going to be turned into condos or something other than parking garages, because the cars won't be.
As you mentioned that we took a quick look, we'll give you something back. It becomes very complicated because we still owe $6 million on that garage. Obviously,
get us out of debt.
Well, you owe $6 million, so you still got to figure out what you do with parking. But there's some other implications we have to talk to you about. For example, even I was not aware of this, that when the garage went in originally, Dan can speak this better than me, that the reason you got no driving on that section of the beach, that 350 spaces were allocated to the parking garage.
Free?
Not free, but they had to be available. And there's also arrangements with some of the businesses there. I'm not saying you can't do something, but there are some implications to how previous council achieved no driving on that section of the beach. And you have an obligation to keep spaces. That was part of the original agreement. Dan knows better. I didn't know that. Okay, that was
Well,
news to me.
I just wanted the information. I think the individual needs to know that either we're going to look at it, we're not going to look. I just think we need to have all the information available.
I couldn't agree with you more.
If
And we'll put something together for you.
Is it generating any money? Because it would
Yes.
it
Yes.
would generate over.
No,
It would
actually
generate
is,
over
it's an asset. It actually generates extra money now
on return on what capital investment?
on the original $11 million.
Because I know it would generate about $250,000 in ad valorem taxes a year without doing anything.
All I'm saying, we'll give you the information. The council has to decide what they want to do.
Would we have to put that out to bid?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think I didn't respond other than the fact that I would bring it to the council because it was addressed to me. I forwarded it to you.
Right.
I will let the people that made that letter offer know that it's being evaluated, but
Right.
they also are aware, because I told them that we couldn't accept an offer, that if we did anything, it would have to be an RFP or
You have to
whatever.
declare it surplus and you have to bid it.
But that one, and then beach driving. At 12:24, we will adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Who was that?
Could
Oh,
you go-
sorry, Dan.
I'm sorry.
I
didn't mean-
misspoke.
I
At 12:24, we didn't really adjourn. We had one more person to speak. Mr. Eckert.
Well, just to go back to the canvassing board issue, I think that if you could have
A vote?
a vote, that'd be helpful.
I thought I would, okay. Okay, can we have a vote on appointing Billy Wheeler and myself on the canvassing board for the 2018? Is that right?
Yeah, well, you're automatic, the
That's what I
alternate
thought.
would require a vote.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we appoint
Billy-
you to
well,
the
Billy
Value
Wheeler.
Adjustment Board. Oh, and Billy Wheeler. Billy Wheeler,
canvassing board.
To the canvassing board.
Motion's made and seconded. Any objection to the motion and second? Hearing no objection, that motion passes unanimous. And at 12:25, we will now officially adjourn.